In 1946, while I was filming Gilda, the United States Army took a photograph of me from Esquire magazine and taped it to an atomic bomb. They called the bomb Gilda. They painted the name on the side in 2-inch letters above my face and detonated it over the Marshall Islands in the Pacific Ocean. When I found out, I almost went insane with anger. Those were Orson's words. He was my husband at the time, and he watched the whole thing. She almost went insane. I wanted to fly to Washington. I wanted to hold a press conference. I wanted to stand in front of every camera in America and say, "This is not a compliment. This is not something a woman should be proud of. You have put my face on a weapon designed to destroy entire cities, and you expect me to smile?" Harry Cohn wouldn't let me. He said it would be unpatriotic. I was born Margarita Carmen Cancino in Brooklyn, New York in 1918. I became Rita Hayworth by the decision of other people. My first husband changed the name. Electrolysis moved my hairline back 1.5 inches, bleach turned black hair auburn, and the whole apparatus of Columbia Pictures turned a shy Spanish-American girl into the love goddess of Hollywood. I was the most photographed woman in America. I was the pinup on the walls of 10 million soldiers. I was Gilda. Men go to bed with Gilda, but wake up with me. I said that once. I meant every word. And the man who understood it best was also the man who, in the end, used it against me. My mother slept in the same bed as me to try to protect me from my father. My mother, Volga Hayworth, a former Ziegfeld Follies showgirl who had given up her own career when I was born, slept in the same bed as her daughter because she was afraid of what her husband would do if she didn't. My father, Eduardo Cancino, had decided I would be his dance partner, his stage partner, his instrument for reviving the family vaudeville act. He pulled me out of school at 13. I completed the 9th grade, and that was the end of my formal education. On the road, performing in Tijuana nightclubs because California law forbade minors in establishments serving alcohol, in offshore gambling ships because those had even fewer regulations. On the road is where it happened. Orson told biographer Barbara Leeming about it in 1983, years after my death, because I had told him. I never told anyone else. My biographer wrote that my mother may have been the only other person who knew, which is why she slept in the bed with me. Not for warmth, but as a barrier. 2 Rita Hayworths had begun to emerge, one biographer wrote. A shy, insecure girl denied any chance of a normal life, and a sensuous young dancer who had been taught from childhood how to be alluring on stage. I was both of them at once. I was always both of them at once. That is the sentence that explains everything that came after. Every husband, every performance, every man who fell in love with Gilda and was startled to find me in the morning. I naturally am very shy, I told a reporter in 1941. I suffer from an inferiority complex. This surprised people who had seen Gilda. It would not have surprised anyone who knew Margarita Cancino. When my contract with Fox expired, my father hired a car salesman and promoter named Edward Judson to manage my career. Judson was 40 years old. I was 18. He had been married twice before. He neglected to mention this. He got me roles in small studio pictures in 1936, then eloped with me to Las Vegas in 1937, and proceeded to manage both my career and my appearance with the specific thoroughness of a man who had decided his investment required maintenance. He signed me to Columbia. He oversaw the electrolysis that moved my hairline back 1.5 inches, a process as painful as it sounds, conducted over multiple sessions while I sat and let people reshape my face because the people with authority over me had decided it needed reshaping. He changed my hair from black to auburn. He changed my name from Cancino to Hayworth, my mother's family name, because Cancino was too ethnic, too Spanish, too much of what I actually was. I had no money when I left him. I had given everything to his management of my career and walked out with nothing. In 1941, Orson Welles was in the middle of the nightmare of the magnificent Ambersons, flipping through Life magazine in frustration when he stopped on a photograph of me. He started calling. I said no. He kept calling. I said no again. He called again. I finally said yes, because he had a quality I had not encountered before. He seemed genuinely curious about what was inside the image, not just the image itself. He taught me philosophy and literature and theater. He talked to me like someone whose mind was worth engaging. I had been pulled out of school at 13 to dance in Tijuana nightclubs, and here was the most celebrated director in Hollywood treating me like an intellectual equal. I fell in love with him over dinner. I married him in September 1943, wearing a beige suit and a ruffled white blouse, returning to work at the studio a few hours later. None of my colleagues knew about the wedding until I announced it the day before. That is how I made decisions in those years. Orson found me clingy. That was the word people used to describe what happened to our marriage. That I needed more than he could give. That I wanted a home and a family and a stability he was incapable of providing. He was always working, always in the middle of something enormous and unfinished, always thinking about the next project while the current one collapsed around him. I wanted, more than anything, a happy marriage. I wanted someone to trust who would provide a shoulder to lean on. Orson was brilliant, and he was kind to my mind in ways no one had been before. But the distance between what I needed and what he was able to provide grew wider every year. He was also unfaithful. He had affairs with other women. Judy Garland was one. I had hoped the film would save the marriage. By the time it was released, the divorce was final. We filmed The Lady from Shanghai in 1946 while separated. The film is about a beautiful woman who is not what she appears, who exists inside a hall of mirrors where nothing reflects accurately and every image is a lie. Orson wrote it while we were in the middle of divorce proceedings. He filled it with what he knew about me and what he thought about me and what he felt about me. Complicated enough that he needed 155 minutes to express it. Welles knew that Rita Hayworth was deeply unhappy with the way Hollywood treated and commodified her as a sex object, one film scholar wrote. He deliberately shot much of the film to subvert that image. The short blonde hair, the character who manipulates rather than simply allures, the femme fatale revealed as something more calculating and less romantic than her appearance suggested. He was making a statement about what Hollywood had done to me. He was also making a statement about us. The film failed at the box office. The failure was attributed in part to my hair. Audiences came expecting Gilda and found a platinum blonde stranger. Critics found the plot baffling. Bosley Crowther of the New York Times wrote that the murder plot was a thoroughly confused and baffling thing. Orson said Cohn had ruined his film. Cohn said Orson had ruined his star. I said very little. I had made the film to save a marriage that was already gone, and neither the marriage nor the film had worked out the way I hoped. Hayworth had agreed to take the role of Elsa Bannister as part of a final effort to save the marriage, one film scholar noted. She moved back in with Welles during production. When the film was released in June 1948, the divorce had been finalized. She had spent 2 years of her life on a film designed as a reconciliation and watched it become a record of an ending instead. That is the specific cruelty of working with someone you love. The art outlasts the relationship and stands there afterward, evidence of something you couldn't keep. In 1983, Orson Welles sat down with biographer Barbara Leeming and told her things about me. He told her about the rages, how I would fly into terrible anger, break furniture, get in cars, and drive into the hills at night in ways that terrified him. He said he'd had to get in the car and try to control me. He said the rages were always directed at Harry Cohn, or my father, or my mother, or my brother. Never at him. Never once at him. He saw this lovely girl destroying herself, he told Leeming. That is the sentence he chose. A lovely girl destroying herself. As if the destruction were something I had elected, something internal and self-generated, unconnected to the decade I had spent being managed and controlled and having my face put on bombs. He never paid child support. I sued him for it, and the effort was unsuccessful and added to my stress, as my biographer wrote with considerable understatement. He told Leeming about my rages and my drinking and the terrible nights and the lovely girl destroying herself, and he did not mention the child support. I said once, I am attracted to mean personalities. I said, basically, I am a good, gentle person, but I am attracted to mean personalities. This was my attempt to explain 5 marriages, each of which had started with someone who seemed to offer something I had never had, and ended with the discovery that the offering was incomplete. My father, Judson, Cohn, Orson, Ali Khan, Dick Hames, James Hill. The line of men who had decided who Rita Hayworth was. The year after Leeming's interviews with Orson, she decided to write a biography of me instead. She said, until I knew what had happened between Rita and her father, there were things that she'd done that I blamed her for. She set to work interviewing my companions, relatives, and partners. What she found changed the whole accounting. Rita Hayworth hated being Rita Hayworth, Leeming concluded. She made herself into one of Hollywood's greatest stars, and it never gave her any happiness. For the last 20 years of my life, people thought I was an alcoholic. The rages, the outbursts, the incident at Heathrow Airport in January 1976, when I was removed from a TWA flight for an angry outburst and photographed looking disheveled and confused, the photograph published in newspapers across the world. The gradual disappearance from public life, the inability to remember lines that ended my career. People looked at all of this and said, Rita Hayworth has a drinking problem. My daughter Yasmin, who moved in with me and cared for me until my death, described it. I remember as a child that she had a drinking problem. I thought, well, there's not much I can do. In 1980, I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. What had looked like alcoholism, the rages, the confusion, the outbursts, the personality changes, was early onset Alzheimer's. Yasmin described the relief of having a name for it. We had a name at last, Alzheimer's. Of course, that didn't really come until the last 7 or 8 years. There were 2 decades of hell before that. 2 decades. 2 decades of the press calling me a drunk, of being photographed at airports looking confused, of Orson telling a biographer about the rages and the terrible nights, of Harry Cohn's decisions about what was and was not unpatriotic. Men go to bed with Gilda, but wake up with me. I said that with some bitterness. The bitterness was real, but also complicated, because Gilda was made from me, from something real in me, something I had learned to do. She was the part of me that had been trained and shaped and bleached and moved and electrolyzed and renamed. She was what happened to Margarita Cancino after a long time in a machine. What men woke up with was what the machine had left behind. The shy woman, the one with the inferiority complex, the one who wanted a home and a happy marriage and a shoulder to lean on and kept finding men who could not give those things, or who gave them briefly and then left to work on their next project. I died on May 14th, 1987. I was 68 years old. Yasmin was with me, my daughter from the marriage to Prince Ali Khan, the one I had fought for in a custody battle that consumed years of my life, the one who had moved in when I could no longer care for myself. My hair had gone completely white. She desperately wanted to be the perfect mother, as many women who grew up the way I grew up do, my biographer wrote. But because their own mothers failed to protect them, they often try to set up an ideal of what a mother should be, which dooms them to failure. My mother had slept in my bed to try to protect me. I had married 5 times trying to find what protection felt like from the right direction. I had made 61 films over 38 years. I had been Gilda, and the love goddess, and the pinup on the bomb, and the platinum blonde in the Hall of Mirrors. And at the end, Yasmin was there. That was the one thing that held. There is a photograph from the 1940s, the one from Esquire magazine, the one they taped to the bomb. I am lying on my side, one arm extended above my head, looking at the camera with the expression that had been rehearsed since I was 3 years old. I am in my 20s. I am Rita Hayworth, the love goddess, the most photographed woman in America. I was also Margarita Cancino, who had been pulled out of school at 13 to dance in Tijuana nightclubs, who had been renamed and reshaped and had her hairline moved back by electrolysis, who had been sold by one man to another and married to men who saw the image and could not locate the person inside it, who had spent the last 20 years of her life with a disease that looked like alcoholism until someone looked more carefully. They taped my face to a bomb. They called the bomb Gilda. They detonated it over an atoll in the Pacific Ocean and considered this a tribute. I wanted to hold a press conference. Harry Cohn said it would be unpatriotic. Every man I knew fell in love with Gilda. They all woke up with me. And none of them, not my father, not Judson, not Cohn, not Orson, not any of them, ever quite reconciled themselves to the fact that the 2 women were the same woman, that Margarita had made Gilda out of everything that had been done to her, and that they were both real and both mine, and neither of them was available for the kind of ownership that men in Hollywood considered their right. She made herself into one of Hollywood's greatest stars, and it never gave her any happiness. That is not the ending I would have chosen, but it is the accurate one.